다음에 자 메가나르 나와서 싸움으로 킹게 그 다음에 떨어졌고요. 거기서 바오가 도이면 바오가 그냥 때리면 바오가 돌아 3명이래요. 바오가 도이면 세상이 돌아요. 협곡이 돌아요. 매일날 여기에 갈려버렸습니다. 와! 아니 이러면 진짜 심지어 도망가기까지 최대한 그러니까 다시 싸움을 다시 하나요? 안쪽에서 양해하시죠. 양해하시죠. 끝난 다음에
모두의 안심처.
그리고
헤라가
진지하게 아니 방금 진지하게가 또 미친듯이 잘 들어. 도이가 마무리를 못 시켜요. 지금 사이언을 어떻게든 빨간다. 안 돼요 위에. 그래서 아래쪽도 이렇게 되면 야롱도 위험하죠.
맞아.
언제든지 뒤를 잡을 수 있는 강점이 있는 챔피언.
마공
알리사 등장.
그리고
포카 도이.
도이 나가요.
나르
그리고 메가나르가 앞라인 잡아줬어.
카이사
녹였죠. 이
다음으로 뜨죠.
왕타가 안 맞았어요. 근데 페이스
코드라켓
정글 펜타.
포드라.
헤카리 정글
아니 이거 펜타.
정글 펜타. 펜타켓 교체.
T1 is now on a match point in order to advance to the second round of the playoffs. This time around, T1 had a very stable comp, and Aurelia was a counter pick into Gnar, which is actually rather risky instead of stable. But T1 was able to play out this comp really well. T1 first picked Udyr, and DRX was pretty confident and sure that Gnar is the key to success in today's series, that they take away Gnar as their first pick. So T1 picked a hard counter pick into Gnar, Aurelia. Regardless of the result of game number 3, compared to game 1 and 2, T1 this time around, they had a firm and solid goal and theme of their comp for the first time in today's series. And because of the very early mistake happened on the bottom lane, actually Ezreal was able to get super fed and the game was pretty much imbalanced till the end. But still, we also wanted to point out that T1 was able to find main theme of their play, and their bottom duo was able to find a massive edge over the opponent's lane partners. We can also put it this way. Kingen was able to play the top side of the map really well, but DRX bottom duo was the weak point of DRX. So let's take a look at this rotation coming out from Udyr. So it was definitely spotted on their vision that Udyr was rotating towards the bottom lane, but I guess DRX didn't think that it's gonna be an aggressive turret dive. Instead, they thought it's gonna be a Scuttle or a Drake, so Orianna TPs to her lane, and Hecarim rotates to the top side of the map. So Cuz was easily able to cross over the line, and it was an easy peasy turret dive for T1 because there were no guards on the side of DRX to block this kind of rotation coming out from T1. I think DRX had no heads up for this upcoming turret dive at all. It was really odd to see this because the minion vision did spot Udyr coming to the bottom hand side of the map, but still, rest of the DRX players was not making any cover play. And this is the point where T1 was able to crash the game. On the other hand, DRX was not able to capitalize the lead that they had in the early game on the top side of the map. So once again, they were in a big rush. Snar didn't have any Gnar bar, and also Kingen was not taking his TP or something. He was just walking towards the top side of the map. Ezreal had 2 items completed, whereas Bao only had Kraken Slayer. Maybe DRX was too caught up with the fact that T1 should not take this Herald, but if you are fight out this team fight like this, maybe you should rather concede this over to your opponent and take a safer position. Once again, we could see some panic play coming out from DRX. I don't see any reason for Gnar to stay between the turrets. And T1, with that huge teamfight victory, they were able to accelerate their lead, and we were able to see a very clean macro play coming out from T1. I think this was the best game out of T1 in today's series so far. DRX did fight their tooth and nails in order to stay in this game, but T1 was way too strong. And the POG will be Faker on Twisted Fate. 57% of kill participation, and the most critical and crucial thing for T1 was that Faker was able to pick up a kill whenever he was using his Destiny. He was always getting the best value out of his Destiny Gate, and also Orianna was not able to have the lane priority to hold Twisted Fate in lane. Even though TF was very low on mana with the turret dive earlier in this game, he was using all of his ability to charge up and regenerate some of the mana back in order to pull it off. And that fantastic Everfrost was the game-ending activation in the end. I have actually never seen Everfrost like finding that much of a value so far. 5 out of 9 votes picked up by Faker, and the rest was heading over to Teddy and Ezreal, who was able to outlane and have a lane kingdom on the bottom lane as well. T1 is now on a match point, and DRX really needs to pick up another win to put this game back to an even state. So let's take a look at game number 4, whether DRX can find a clutch play up against T1.
Thank you so much, Jisun, as per usual, for the translation of the analyst desk. And we are back for potentially the final game, unless DRX can find a miracle, find that dark horse within themselves, which I think if there's any team in the LCK throughout this season, I think it is DRX that could potentially do it. They need to try and get themselves to that coveted 5th game, and that would also mean that we get back-to-back 5-game series in the first round of playoffs, which is an absolutely amazing sign.
And that's in a first round of playoffs where people were genuinely expecting it to just be a quick 6-0, right?
Yeah.
Like both of the favorite teams looked way stronger. Nongshim looked super inconsistent. We've seen DRX just lose to Live Sandbox, which is...
I mean, they were on a huge losing streak throughout the last stage, right? So when you look at a series like this, it's almost like the biggest disappointment should be almost on T1 for even dropping a game, right? Just because of the state of both of these teams heading into these playoffs. That being said, DRX have found it in themselves. They even found a miracle team fight towards the end of that last game. Flipping on a Baron afterwards, maybe not the right choice, but you can understand the desperation there. I think there has been a few snafus when it comes to some of the individual play as well. Solka was pretty invisible in the last game. The Shockwave's also not necessarily finding too many targets, so see whether some stability can be gained here so that DRX can bring us to some silver scrapes.
Regardless of the outcome of this game, I think DRX overperformed compared to expectations. And it's important that we stress this because while some of the issues still remain, and then you already pointed out Solka, I feel like Bao and Becca also haven't had the biggest impact. Last game was particularly egregious, where Teddy, of course, was able to pick up a really big early lead, but I feel like even in the games before that, Solka, you know, in the first game on the Zoe picking up early kills and not really being able to leverage it consistently, are the type of things where, while we thought that DRX were gonna have a rough time, and you still see those shine through. I think Kingin has been insane today. Like, legitimately,
Yeah, he's been fantastic.
A standout player who has been able to consistently find plays regardless of the game state and the situation. But as a whole, we do see that DRX's style of falling behind and then coming back later on has kind of been abandoned. They now need a solid early game. And if they don't get that, I think that T1 has shown that, especially in that last game, they know how to snowball. They're going to be able to do so effectively. And we do see the Brom ban coming out here. That's crazy.
Feels a little bit like a throwaway, as Hecarim available, and Pyosik has been picking it up every single time. T1 maybe just looking for DRX to have that very predictable first pick and then go towards something in response. We'll see where they do decide to go, though, because Renekton finally available for the first time here as well.
But the Gnar is open, and that's a big problem, and that's why I think yeah, there we go. We do see the Gnar coming eventually, as if T1 wants to go for Renex in Italy, it's open. You know, this is the line. It is a matchup where Kaz needs to be on top side, which allows Pyosik to possibly look for any openings, maybe go for some defensive play. But I wonder to what extent T1 wants to opt into that early aggression, as this got to be a pick away from Solka again, right? Because I feel like the Zoe is not in position at the moment where the champion in of itself is so strong that it warrants like a blind pick.
Yeah, blind pick ability not necessarily there.
But it does make sense in the context of Solka being able to actually outlane Faker in the first game on the Zoe and out pressuring him. And yes, they lost the game eventually due to heroic plays from Kana and Keria. And we actually see the Hecarim go a little bit lower in priority, which is an interesting kind of adjustment as we get through this pick and ban. Now, Lilia is open, and knowing Pyosik, he doesn't really care about that matchup, and he'll just be like, I'm just going to lock that in. I don't really mind either way.
They could actually just, oh, okay.
No.
Mundo being considered, because Pyosik just likes hovering Mundo, but Volibear would be much better, and they are going to take that one away. So here it is. Solka is going to run back the Orianna as well. He's got a lot to prove on this champion now. We know what he's capable of, right? He's played many games of Orianna and has done much better than what he showed us in Game 3.
Look at these Jace. Just run it back with the DRX call.
Yeah, you could just go for it if you want to.
I don't even think that it's a bad call. And
I'd prefer Ezreal, to be perfectly honest. I think Ezreal Zoe is so strong, but instead they do decide to go towards a top lane matchup, and it's Akali. So Akali's been changed quite a lot on this patch, and that is going to be the choice into the Gnar. The all-in potential is there. You can definitely abuse the mini Gnar, but I feel like it's not necessarily as cut and dry as the Aurelia.
It's a very confident call from T1. Your damage profile is really nicely spread now, right? Because you have your AD jungler with 2 AP solo laners, but it is really risky. We just saw Kana come off getting solo kill due to pretty poor early laning, with Kingin being able to pick up a freebie kill there after the Aurelia tanks a shot in a counter matchup. And then you opt into the Akali, which has been a pick that I think has become a lot stronger. I think her all-in potential post-6 is even more threatening than it was before. Of course, now gets magic scaling on the R1, if I'm not mistaken, meaning that your
First
actual damage generally will go up. And combined with the fact that your E... Now, there's a heck of a lot of damage when you go back. You do need to go back, though. But with a Hecarim, I don't think you're too afraid of that. The one downside of this is that I don't mind backline dive into DRX's comp because both compositions just want to do the same thing, and it comes down to execution. But it does feel a little bit hard to match with the Zoe. However, it is Faker Zoe, and if you have performances like that, one highlight play around the bear, you're like, you know, sure.
Yeah.
We'll forgive you for that one.
Okay, looking to go back to the Varus. It would be a lot of poke when paired with the Zoe, but I just much prefer Ezreal in this situation. Going to be the Varus, though. Teddy's certainly feeling pretty high on this one. Hasn't found success so far in this series, however. Back to it one more time. Now, DRX, what are they going to do towards this bottom side? They already have a pretty decent dive composition, so once again, Ezreal does stand out as something that would certainly work.
I think Ezreal looks really good. I'd even argue that you could think about taking away the Kench here. You do give up a lot of laning pressure, and Ezreal doesn't really need Kench, so in that regard, it's not great. It's merely so that your backline dive ball composition with Mega Gnar, Volibear jumping in with an Orianna ball on top of them, which is devastating, then actually does have a lot more threat, because if the Kench, which is, I'm fairly certain is what Carrier's going to pick here, unless they want to go really aggressive and go for something like a Leona, which is a good matchup.
Oh, this would be just lane domination.
Yeah, that's scary, because that is, you are not matching that push.
No, not in any way.
It will be...
You're not really looking towards any late game team fighting though, if you do lock away the Karma. Just because there is not a lot of frontline available outside of Just Cuz, and so this will add a bit more hard CC and a little bit more go in. And we also saw Carrier have a wonderful performance on this in-game #1, managing to snipe Ezreal's left, right, and center with those Zenith Blades.
It's also a good matchup into Rakan, right? And that combined, it does make sense. Downside of this is that if everything goes right for DRX, Teddy isn't really allowed to play the game once people start grouping up, because playing Varus into Rakan, Volibear, Gnar is not fun. And you don't have a Thresh, you don't have a Tahm Kench, you have a Leona. Teddy's going to say goodbye as he Zenith Blades into the enemy backline. Kana and Kaz diving with him. And then it's up to Teddy and Faker to kind of try and keep themselves alive for as long as possible. And as a whole, this T1 comp yet again feels like a comp where if you don't get a lead and you're not able to just straight up trample your opponent, you're going to have a really rough time. However, this comp does trample extraordinarily well.
Yeah, it should. And the laning phase should certainly belong to T1, but I feel like it's dive comp versus dive comp, and one of them has an Ezreal, the other has a Varus. So who's going to survive in the backline most likely? And look, if on paper, you're going to give that to the Ezreal every day of the week. However, some side lane possibilities here. Hecarim still very, very strong. Pyosik finally going to bring out the Volibear for this match. Kingen has been brilliant on the Gnar so far. Solka is desperate to get some redemption on his Orianna. If DRX win this, I mean, man, the story moving into Game 5 is just going to be absolutely fantastic. And I think if you have a look at the drafts down the line, DRX should have an advantage if they can stem the bleeding early. We're looking forward to seeing whether they can do that. As once again, T1 on the red side. When they've been wearing their team colors, they haven't been as successful here today.
Oh my god, Halo Blades. That is not something you see very often, as normally we've already pointed out the lethal tempo variation, but most common, of course, is the Comet. Lethal, or rather Halo Blades, of course, in terms of early short trades, it's insane. And once you have your W and you can use get blight stacks stacked quickly rather on your opponent, I can't imagine your early game trading power is just disgusting. Wonder if he went for Inspiration second, or if he did go for Mana Flow Band, because otherwise, until he gets he did go. Oh, okay, went for the cookie, so not for Mana Flow. I actually expect that to maybe impact a little bit until he gets his tier stacked up, which he should be able to pick up on his second back. First back, of course, reserved for a nice serrated Dirk. Otherwise, no real surprises here, I'd say, in terms of runes. And I do think that DRX, as we look across these games, in terms of cohesive drafts, have definitely edged out T1. I think that the last T1 composition was very clear-cut. The first one was very conservative, a lot of power picks, but the second one especially just felt like T1 just drafted themselves into a hole, and then DRX were able to play that one out really, really nicely. First Volibear pick, and Volibear, I think, is in a great spot at the moment, has really, really nice setup, and post-6, DRX are a force to be reckoned with.
Not to mention he's gone the Battle Bear this time around as well. It is going to be Press the Attack. Last time we did see this one come out, I believe it was the Predator picked up by Cuz, who just showed us how strong the Volibear can be as far as early game ganking power. This works out a little bit differently, as Sunlight going to be procced there, and you can see that, you know, this is a lane that's going to be very, very difficult for Bao and Becca. I don't think, like, they shouldn't be dying, right, just because there is a lot of safety in this lane with the mobility that they have. But still shouldn't be able to win out any straight-up trades as Keria looks for the Zenith Blade as soon as he hits that level 2. And this is a full wave. It seems to be pushed towards this Ezreal Rakan.
And we also have Kuz pathing towards bot side, so if they get a lot of poke and actually land down some meaningful damage, Bao and Becca actually might be in for a rough time. So they need to be really respectful, don't trade too much, just let them shove you in. This early on, the Varus isn't really going to be able to reliably take off plates. And these trades are never going to go well for you, as we see here.
Yeah.
Pioshik will be able to, or he's pathing towards topside rather. I'd expect this matchup early on for the Akali to be fairly rough. It's once you get some abilities right, maybe once you hit 6 and you are playing against a really squishy Gnar, you're fine. But early on, it's melee into range, and you don't really have the all-in pressure yet. And it's just free grass box for King.
Stacking him up for the moment, trying to find as many boomerangs as possible, and as you say, it's going to be illustrated in the CS gap. Faker also able to, you know, stay ahead in this lane. It is going to balance out, as he's just going to give Kuz an opportunity to lock down the bottom side. Rift Scuttler, Pioshik, decent win rate so far on the Volley Bear in the jungle. This, of course, comes mostly from a year ago. But, yeah, he's very practiced on the Bear, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he can get done in this game, because this is a pick that we were expecting to have a bit more power in this series, especially based on what Kuz has already showed us in their Halma Live series.
Becca freezing the wave there, or attempting to at the very least, making sure that Bao is in a good position and they can just hold it there, put some pressure on T1, maybe threaten with a Pioshik gank. We'll be able to get the back in the very end. Not sure whether or not they were able to actually get it, and the trading is inconsequential. As Kana, you know, you got the counter pick, and I am gonna have faith in T1 to not pick an Akali in a pivotal game in your playoffs for no reason. But the early game, as already said, as expected, not great. I think once Kuz pays attention, once you hit level 6, it might look completely different. But for right now, it is very much King in full control of this lane. Fortunately for T1, Faker and Teddy Carrier are the ones that are controlling the other lane. So Kuz not playing without any priority, which is generally very unpleasant as a jungler.
Absolutely. So the Hecarim should be fine. The Akali, maybe not so much, as you can see, over double the CS in favor of Kingen right now at this point in time. Bao and Becca still struggling against this combo, but Bao has been just picking up the opportunistic CS where he can find it, and has actually created himself a slight advantage, in fact, despite not exactly having lane control. Faker missing that bubble there, but not going to get punished, and here is going to be the first Drake going over to the Hecarim. Not much of an answer here, as you can see. Kanna immediately teleporting back to this lane, and Kingen probably going to be doing the same thing as well on the other side whenever he would like to.
He doesn't even need to teleport yet. Just the level advantage and just the control he has at the moment is enough to zone away Kanna, who will be getting a relevant Drake this game as well, which is very, very nice, as we have actually been treated decently well here tonight. Only had a single Cloud Soul, and that one was, in the end, still enough. As I wonder how this matchup is going to go post-6. It's not a matchup we've seen for a really long time. Akali, even though she was changed / buffed, has not really seen the forefront in the LCK as of yet. But it is a champion where we know if you ever get a lead, doesn't feel very fun or interactive for the opponents. Now, Ezreal has a little bit more ways of dealing with it, but it's still always something that you're going to have to play so respectful to.
Yeah, this backline dive on both sides of the Rift is in fact very, very scary. Imagining the Gnar and Volley Bear together just launching themselves towards the backline is going to be very, very rough. So now Kuz finds Pioshik inside his jungle. As Faker, once again, not going to find the bubble. Shockwave comes down this time as the Ignite is actually utilized very early. Meanwhile, a fight on the top side of the map as well. Onslaught of Shadows comes down. Kanna from over the wall, and the execution is absolutely perfect to get the first blood for the Akali. So necessary, as well as now Kingen in some trouble. But he should be alright as Faker lands that bubble, actually flashes on top of him, picks up the barrier, as well as now Sulker's the one that has to run. The flash over, Faker finds the solo kill, but it's answered in the end as well.
It's action all over the map. Bot lane, fighting, mid lane, solo kill straight at top lane. Working out beautifully for T1 in the end. And the kill does go over to Kanna, who so desperately needed it. Now in mid lane, it's not as good of a trade. Faker getting a little hyphy there with the amount of shots that were available, and like, do I really need to go for a solo kill? Not necessarily, but I'm going to go for it anyway. But I'm pretty sure that Cuz wasn't 6, smited away that Krug, then hit 6. I want to double check it here. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah,
if
you're
he doesn't
right.
hit the smite on the big Krug, or is it just even the little ones? No, he needs to hit the smite, because then you have ult advantage and it's just a free kill.
And it might have actually been very similar for Pyoshik as well, as they had been farming at almost exactly the same clip. So, winning out on that 50-50, so important here for T1 towards the top side. As we have a look at Faker pressing as many summon spell buttons as he could possibly find.
Yeah, and makes a little bit of sense knowing that the Shockwave has already been invested and Faker sees the barrier. Unfortunately, doesn't really get as much value from the second flash, still in the middle of a minion wave.
Well, Cuz gonna save Faker here in the mid lane as well. Ulti's utilized there by Pyoshik, but they didn't actually wait before the Shockwave was available. It now just comes off cooldown. So it didn't quite have the damage in order to take down the Zoe. His carry is just going to help Faker come through here, look to pick out all of these minions, get himself a reset that is not going to be quite as punishing as Kana starting to step forward in this lane, as you can see.
Herald is a really big one. Both teams are collapsing.
Yep, in they go. There's Carrier flashing on forward. Onslaught of Shadows comes down and Solka completely removed from the fight. Finds a couple with the Shockwave, but he is too far out of position. The rest of DRX say, well, I guess we'll take a consolation blue buff and hope things are going to be okay. Chains of Corruption land onto Becca. Quickness utilized. He will get himself out of the way. So, T1 winning out on this one in the end, and we do have actually Faker picking up the Eye of the Herald. Can use that wherever he would like.
Things are not okay for DRX here. They're losing out repeatedly. And in of itself, giving up objectives isn't a huge problem, but giving over kills to these solo lane carries on the side of T1 really is, because T1, when fed this composition, warps into a super oppressive 1-4 composition where you have Kana in the side lane, no one can deal with him because he got a couple of kills early, and then the poke from Faker and Teddy is not fun to play to. Solka finds some nice sidesteps, but the real problem is just the all-around positioning. Can't be that far up with your bot lane, is slower on the rotation, because even if you do like hit a big ultimate there, it doesn't matter, there's no follow-up. You need to actually be able to have the rest of your team and respect appropriately. Not the case there, and it's not end of the world. Again, the wombo combo is insane. It might find a kill here.
Yeah, we're looking for it. Pyoshik's going to dive on top of Carrier right now, keeping himself alive for a while, but the exhaust is going to be put down. Solar Flare comes through as well. They trade 1-for-1, and now Teddy's looking for more. The teleport coming through to help out. And there's a horse down here at the same time. Piercing Arrow will connect. The Rampage just has a drive-by, and now Faker gets to come on through down all those summoners with the W, and T1 will mop it up.
And DRX looked so good in the games that they won, but now they're just getting outmatched all over the map. Kana also having to use his ultimate defensively. Solka going for roam. DRX want to make a cross-map play.
Yep, they're looking to see whether they can get up here. Let's hope that the Shroud's going to be available. A Shuriken backflip to get out of the way of the UFO. And Solka will come through, deny that minion wave. Shockwave's going to be flashed, and Kana should make it to relative safety, but will have to give up control of his turret.
See the pinks go down towards the mid lane. T1 says, Faker, shove that lane and throw down the Herald that you still have in your inventory. But that turnaround on the bot lane, man, I know we're going to see a replay of that, and I really want to, because you see the knowledge of Carrier and Teddy that they can actually turn this around, that this is not something that you're going to get away with just trading a kill. And it's because these double ultimates are available, right? So the damage coming through here is not nearly enough. There comes the Solar Flare. And then the W-empowered Q from Varus is just...
It's gross.
Disgusting. And this is the power spike that you're looking for. Getting a couple of kills this early is really nice, as Cuz says, that's fine, I'll tank the turret, no problem whatsoever. Bao has no amount of skill in the world. Unfortunately, they can outplay that. And the topside play doesn't work out for DRX.
Yeah, so the response is not going to be there. They just lose 3. As we get a look in on Teddy, as Kingan's just going to get a solo kill. So I guess in a delayed sense, the top lane play does work out, as now Kingan will be able to get a whole bunch of plates as well, unless he wants to deny the entire minion wave, in which case he's just going to back away. So Kana struggling a little bit in this matchup. It does certainly feel like Kingen has been the better man as far as the 1v1.
And this is with a counter pick, right? Like, it's not something you get away with. Kingen, as you say,
Crushed it straight up.
It's sad, but I think in this scenario, it might truly be better top lane doesn't win. Which is an unfortunate reality, because we all know better jungler always wins. That's like rule number 1 of League.
Yeah, Kingen actually has the mistake as well, where his name starts with K and I, and there is another top laner that suffers from that particular issue himself here in the LCK.
Yeah, where you get the gold lane, you get solo kills, but it doesn't actually matter.
Yeah.
Because there are 3 mon coming, and you're fed, but you don't have Meganar, and there's a lot of damage available.
Yep, and now he's going to be put into the blender. Canna gets underneath the turret, and you don't even need perfect execution to lock that one down. It's just too many strong members on T1's side. It's just a little bit unfortunate for Kingen.
And DRX are getting out-tempoed across the map, and this is T1 playing a lot more like their their last game rather, where they're consistently looking for plays, trying to force. And there they had a comp that actually was built to do that. I think this comp to a lesser extent it's more just T1 trying to force the issue, use the priority. This is, I think, the 3rd dive that we've seen of them this game, where they're just continuously looking for openings. And this is where the DRX comp is weak. So as a DRX fan, yes, they're 2.5k gold behind, but it is not the end of the world. Like in game number 2, or game number 3 rather, there is still the angle of finding the big ultimate. And the team comp from T1, the only front line is carry-out to a lesser extent Cuz, so if you can actually find those backline and blow them up, still possible here, but considering how the last game went, Atlas, I'm not very optimistic.
No, it is certainly a worry. That being said, this is DRX territory. They're going to have to do some vintage DRX in order to get themselves out of this one. As up towards the top side comes Cuz. Kingen's got a huge target on his head. And Cuz is just saying, well, you can try and escape if you can. Nara's going to get him out of there, or at least attempt to, as Canna is going to avoid the UFO. The wallop is going to be good though, and Sulker is going to come on forward. Watch out for the orb. Let's see whether the shockwave is going to connect. Canna's got a blast cone there and will utilize it in order to create enough space. Now Carrier, possibly out of position, but Pyosik is going to be distracted by a Rift Scuttler. And Faker is going to finish off the outer turret in the mid lane.
It's the best turret to go down for Zoe, because now all of a sudden the mid lane is dangerous territory.
Oh, speaking of which, Faker looking for it onto Sulker here. Prowler's Claw comes out as well. Shockwave does find 2 this time. Faker has to flash to get himself out. He waits, has the blast going. The dissonance isn't enough damage. But that is definitely a very friendly move as Pyosik looks to try and catch some backs, but he won't find it.
I think it was trying to look for the cheeky kill on Faker there. Just like backing in the brush,
throw
my lightning. But unfortunately not enough. Might be able to pick up a play here on the bot side. That's unfortunately the cleanse forced, and that means any subsequent ultimate or a Xenoblade from Teddy means very unfortunate things for Bao, who has not had the greatest of series. I think that Teddy and Carry has also kind of leveled up as the series has progressed, and this has been kind of a common theme for T1, with, ironically enough, the exception being Kana, who's had it a bit more rough as the steal attempt comes through.
And Pyosik just has to leave. Cuz says thanks for the leash, and that's just the state of the jungle at this point in time. Unfortunate for Pyosik. He almost got away with it, and Cuz, you can see the big grin on his face as well. The opposite is true for Pyosik.
And this is this is what we saw in the Live Sandbox series as well, where DRX, they get desperate and they start making plays like this. They don't have cryo, they don't have the vision, they don't have the setup.
Oh, can Keenan find it again? Canna is able to get that backflip to get him out of the way, and now it decides to go back in. There's a perfect execution, locks it down, turns it straight onto the face of King, and however, he's still going to fall down. Pyosik does have the ulti button, presses it and says outplay this, and Canna's not going to be able to. 1 for 1, but more resources needed for DRX.
Naguri might have left the LCK, but his spirit lives on. Kana, he just needs a death, maybe 2, and then that's when the solo kills start coming through, okay?
All right, he's got 2 deaths. That is definitely the Naguri moment.
But
100% agree.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, Bao, remember that cleanse from before? Now the flash is down, Solar Flare comes through. There's a lot of CC available here. Grand entrance, that's pretty cool, but I think Faker can actually survive this pretty comfortably, and now Becca has to escape. Sulker going to move on down. He's been putting out fires this entire game. Now they're just zoning DRX away from this situation. 4 versus 2. Pyosik is on the top side of the map. And now T1 should be able to at least finish up this outer turret as Bubble's going to connect as well at the same time. And yeah, it's a lot of damage with these piercing arrows as Duskblade already completed for Teddy.
You know what makes matters worse is the fact that we're looking at an Infernal Drake. Zoe, Akali,
Varus?
and Varus with Infernal Drake is, I think the words we're looking for is not good.
Yeah.
I mean, we could get more eloquent than that, but that's what it will always boil down to.
Sometimes the more simple option is the best.
I tend to agree.
Why use a large word when a small one will suffice, you know?
That is a reference, but I'm not entirely sure what to, but I know the original quote.
Yeah, it's an oldie. An oldie, but a goodie. As, okay, Teddy coming back into this mid lane, he'll tidy this one up. Top lane out of turrets, also very weak. In fact, they've got turrets ready to fall across the map here on T1's side. The map control coming out yet again. This has certainly been their strength throughout this series.
And coming into this game, we talked about T1. If they find leads, their comp is, or their draft rate is so good at running over. And this is something that we see even here with Kana getting taken low, but King and Frozen, his entire rotation, doesn't actually get it. And this is a change to Akali, right? The second activation of her E has so much damage now. It's no longer like a 50-50. It's a super backloaded ability where the second the going in actually gives you all the damage that you need. The punish is really nice here from Pioshik, but the damage is already done. Akali getting fed is a problem in of itself. And here you benefit from Carrias and Teddy's impeccable laning presence that they've had the entire game. And honestly, there isn't that much that you can do as the DRX bot lane, because with this matchup, you're going to be shoved in. If you get shoved in, like, at some point, Leona's going to hit something, and you need to cleanse, and there's nothing you can do. And that is the kind of inevitability that T1 have kind of lacked in the earlier game drafts, and I'm happy to see them move away from it. I still think this draft is quite a big risk, but at least they're playing to back it up, whereas in the early games we saw tonight, not the case. Whereas DRX, it's 3K, it's not insurmountable, but playing against the Zoe that's this fat and looking at the Infernal Soul of all things is rough.
It is. 2 items already completed as well. Horizon Focus are done as now Cuz going to get engaged on in the bouncy castle and not going to be pulled back by that shockwave as Cuz is going to ulti out. Solka takes a bit of damage from the Paddle Star, but will remain alive. And T1 also going to get out of there. Okay, Pioshik now should be able to find Teddy. The flash comes through, but the stun is going to be there. Pioshik ohm wrecks the turret, and Bao will survive in the end. The last auto will be denied.
So close to get the counter kill, but nice play by DRX. This is what you need to do. You need to find these moments where T1 is not paying attention and slow the tempo of the game down. If you get into a situation 10 minutes in from now and you somehow can deny this Infernal Soul, then you can start looking for fights, right? Then you item deficits don't matter as much. You have the Fed Azrael where there could be Carrier and Kana getting on top of you, but it should be way harder than otherwise is the case. Take a so fed.
Yeah, that's a lot of damage. However, not enough to take down Solka through his command protect. As we have a look at this one more time, Teddy just a little too far forward.
It's greedy, right? He just wants to get the Q. He wants to see the big damage numbers pop up over the Azrael. Understandable, but that one ward gives him a false sense of security, moves too far upward. Well, like if it's a wave, you're like, okay, sure, Teddy, but this was just Q and bound. No, it's not worth it.
No, not really.
It's understandable, sure.
Can still very comfortably clear out these waves, though, not the end of the world for T1 whatsoever. 2 minutes on that Infernal Soul point. One of our earliest souls available so far this series. We remember in Game 1, took forever before a soul was even available. And now it's going to be ticking on up at about 24 minutes or thereabouts. Riftmaker done for Canna as well. Fair bit of damage available for the Akali, but I want to see DRX utilize their comp effectively. Actually find that dive into the backline. Expose Teddy for the complete lack of peel that he has. And Pioshik going to find Cuz here. Takes a bit of damage, as you can see, and he's pretty tanky, is good old Volibear. Canna splitting on the bottom side of the map. And the more T1 split DRX up, the more difficult it's going to be for DRX to win the game.
Cool. Okay. Actually, really healthy there back at bone plating.
Yeah.
Really nice. Gives you a lot of more survivability, as we see. The poke from T1 not really sticking, but it doesn't matter. It's all about what happens in the next minute. And DRX, I love that they try and set up vision here, because you need vision. You need to make sure that you know where the poke is coming from. You need to shove out these waves in the mid and bot lane. Then you need to set up maybe even a possible flank for Kingen so that he can teleport in. Because if Becca, Pioshik or Kingen don't fight backline axes, then the fight against T1 becomes impossibly hard. Someone needs to die. It might be Teddy, it might be Faker, but when that fight starts, it can't be easy.
Yeah, it just becomes extraordinarily difficult for T1 to survive if DRX are able to actually get a fight on their terms. But still, I mean, when the snowball starts, you mentioned, like, this is a risky draft, but the early game has gone the way T1 wants it to. Maybe not quite to the extent that they would have liked, but Soul Point is the thing that is so incredibly important, especially when it's this Infernal Soul that will absolutely help this team so much. Kingen needs more of an R-bar here. See where he can actually gather it as Faker. Fair bit of poke right now as well, as Becca might not even be able to quickness in now with that health bar. Carrier also getting poked. Ezreal, certainly a champion that can do so as well, but DRX just bullied out of the area. They know that they don't have the health bars to challenge this, and it's just Infernal Soul stolen away. The backs are even stopped as Solka is in trouble. He does find a defensive shockwave, flashes his way out, and he survives. Somehow they trade supports. That's not the target that they were looking for, so definitely a sick play is now Canna. Off to the side, he's looking for Kingen, ults his way through and then gets back to the Shuriken. Not able to lock that one down. But T1 now have just so much more value in this composition. The Infernal Soul is so strong, but DRX demonstrating that they have still got fight left in him.
Oh, that's a big teleport, Kingen, if he can get his Narbar.
Yeah, it's in a pretty good position right now, but you can see Cuz just going to try and execute Bao. He's out of this fight, burning down with the red buff as Faker locks down Kingen as well. Cuz is fighting 1 versus 3, by the way, and this is why DRX needed to try and go for that reset. They had their back stopped, and Cuz says absolutely not, my friend. And now Pioshik at the mercy of T1. The huge piercing arrow is going to connect and connect again, as Beck is now in so much trouble. He has to get back to his fountain, and T1, oh my goodness, that was revolting.
T1 is just playing Duck Hunt. They're just sitting there, they're shooting skill shots, and DRX, they can't actually get on top of the carries, and here you see why this kind of composition is so oppressive. DRX themselves have showed it why these poke comps can do so much, and an Infernal Soul again is a worst case scenario, because it means that no matter what you do, unless you straight up win the fight right from the get-go, you can't match the damage, you can't match the elongated fights in a very different way than an Ocean Soul does, but still just as debilitating. And Mouth, here goes the Baron, and sieging with this composition and an Infernal Soul is a nightmare for DRX.
Yeah, they have to now deal with absolutely everything and the kitchen sink, as we are going to have a look at this replay once again. Carrier, I mean, it was ultra optimistic, but Solka actually surviving here was just insane.
It was really nice. I was just shocked by what is about to happen, where Kaz is like, actually no, this is the line. I can go in here, because he runs away, and I'm like, no, what is this? Hecarim, I might have reminded you, Hecarim was nerfed, and yes, this is a fat Hecarim. Yes, he has the Infernal Soul available, but he's building full tank.
Yeah, Infernal Soul, pretty revolting, as we're going to have a look at live here. Carrier looking for Kingen, he'll find it. Oh my god, Teddy, that damage is ridiculous. And the Gnar is very, very dead, just not able to be pushed up in a side lane here, but what option do you have as DRX? Kingen obviously just trying to deny as much value for this Baron as possible, but it's already netted them a 2,000 gold Baron power play.
Pioshik is getting the scuttle though. That's something. And I say it facetiously because there is nothing that DRX can do. They are fully at the mercy of T1, and unlike game number 1 where it felt like DRX always had the angle, but T1 just mechanically outmuscled them, and game number 2 where clearly DRX were the better team, it just feels like they're at the mercy of whatever T1 decides to do. And if T1 don't go for a huge overextension, if they don't start grouping up, if they keep dragging and like stretching out these team fights, keep poking and playing it slow, it's so hard for DRX to get anything done.
Certainly looking like it. Chronicler, this is such a struggle for DRX, who now have an exposed inhibitor in that mid lane. True Shot Barrage just to try and help with these minions, but with the Baron buff, it's so difficult. Chains of Corruption go to Narnia, but it's not even, I think, actually going to be relevant, to be perfectly honest. Cuz trying to find an opening, does have everything available, and he's just going to settle for locking up this inhibitor. Solar Flare comes out now as Becca. Now with the quickness, in goes Carrier, goes Golden as well. Look at the AoE, it's revolting! Bao will just get tidied up by this horse. The perfect execution to get right on top of all these carries. That's a very, very quick ace. You blink and you'll miss it, and T1 are in round 2 of the playoffs.
And it was a valiant effort from DRX. I still insist that they played better than any of us had expected. This team was slumping, they gave it their all, they showed what they were made of, but it's a deserved win for T1 that clearly, once they get going, they know how to close out these type of games.
Oh yeah.
While the first couple of games were kind of rough, game 3 and 4, none of that.
Not at all. It did feel a little bit like DRX after, you know, their second game. It was beautiful, but with how heavily they were shut down in game 3, that's going to play on your mentality. I felt like a little bit of that happened here in game number 4, but I'm just really glad that DRX made sure that they kept T1 honest in this series. I think everyone knew that the relative power levels between these two squads wasn't all that close. However, T1 have a tendency to draft very risky and punishable compositions, and I think that that is still the case. I don't even think, like, that last composition, theoretically, if DRX ever gets to any point of even somewhat close, then Varus never gets to teamfight, you know, and DRX should have been able to get it to that point. However, the outplay was there, the snowball was there, and it was just a really fun last game, you know. You've got Akali's dashing around, and the Varus damage, when he was untouched, just ludicrous.
Just the all-around damage, because even Faker Zoe picked up a couple of kills, gets an Infernal Soul.
Yeah.
You get the double scaling on Akali, even though obviously some of her AD scaling was taken away. It still provides you with so much value. And I think as DRX, you go back and you're like, listen, first couple of games, if this is a DRX, like at the start of the split, they might have won the first game, and they might be up 2-0, and we might be looking at a completely different series. Yeah. Instead, T1, they opt in more and more into the early aggression, into the 1-for-1 draft, and I think that the third game was the best example of, sure, T1, we give you that one. I think this last one, if you do that against Damwon Kia, you're going to get clapped. Like, it's not going to work out at all. So this creates a really interesting question going into the next round. What T1 are we going to see? Because if they keep opting into this, it feels way more flippy than I think it needs to be.
Yeah, now it's going to be up to Damwon Kia to actually figure out which one of these two squads that they've seen so far in our playoffs to choose. But let's have a look at some of the highlights as we reminisce on this series. It was a fun comp, but a dangerous comp, as we've mentioned.
And as DRX, these risks that they were taking in the early game, right, a couple of key skirmishes that just went the wrong way, it makes sense within the context of this series, where DRX felt like the late game from T1 was just too much to really handle. Faker trying to go for a repeat of the play he made with Zoe at the Baron pit, but not having just as much damage available. And waiting for the exhaust here to time out as well, the empowered W or the empowered Q coming out. It's been a lot of the strengths of T1 that have really come to the forefront here yet again, but also the weaknesses. So I think really from DRX, it's a return to form that we saw from them earlier in the season, where I think against weaker teams, they win this series 100%, and it won't even be close. And for T1, the individual level, apart from I think the first game, is still there, because the first game was really, really slow. And we see that here as well, that they're just always looking for the outplay. They're always ready to go.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think that this actually tells us a lot more good things than bad for DRX, despite the result of this particular series. There was potential for this to be actually pretty sad. However, I think it's actually really heartwarming for a very young DRX. Remember, there are 3 rookies on this squad, and so just great to see what they've been able to put together, and good to see them come back to find some form after a very difficult end of the season.
And I think the proactiveness that DRX has is something that I love to see in a team, that even if it doesn't actually work out, they're doing stuff, right? They're trying to make plays, they're trying to make moves, they're trying to get anything done. Unfortunately, they're playing against a veteran roster that, minus the support, has already won the LCK, and that's not an easy feat by any means, because it's just he's just showing off, right? This is just
It's a bit of a demonstration of the power of Infernal Soul as well. It's been a while since we've got to really show that one off. because, yeah, full tank Hecarim that was recently nerfed, looking like he has a Trinity Force hidden somewhere, is very, very frightening. And this was just sad, you know, this is the tidy up from T1, and their wallets were very, very heavy at this stage. As we have a look at the winning push here from T1.
메가다 메가.
Miss it.
상대 메가.
상대 메가.
노플이야 메가.
미드라인
내가
들어가.
묶어줄게. 나 틀리겠어. 볼게. 깜빡하라. 정면 이겨.
대범.
나이스.
Was that one out of Teddy that did
그거요.
all of that damage? I think so.
초반에
yes.
빡세네.
Just,
그지?
it's ridiculous.
GG.
그래도
Bonus soul lethality
다
Varus.
했다.
It's not very fun to play against, and it's interesting that T1
죽었어.
prioritizes this Varus so heavily, which is a distinctive mark away from picks like the Kai'Sa that we saw Hanwha Live put a lot of importance on. And I wonder how the metagame is going to keep developing as we progress throughout this split, right? What are we going to see? What is going to happen? As, yeah, that's a lot of damage coming out from Teddy, and this is into a comp that has so much backline threat.
Yeah, no, exactly. But the thing is, the backline threat was never actually able to get to a position where they were able to threaten a backline in any way, shape, or form, right? Like, Pyosik was trying to do what he could around the map, but this was an example of a game that snowballed out of control before DRX could grab it again. And unfortunately, that allows T1 to get away with this very risky draft and look like gods, right? So let's see whether in the next round that might get punished. However, this time around, it didn't, and it did lead to some pretty flashy plays, which is definitely exciting. But ladies and gentlemen, we have G-Sun alongside for some translation of the analyst desk, so let's throw it over to there.
Thank you very much, guys, and T1 is advancing to the next round of the LCK Spring Playoffs. In game number 4, I think T1 was able to find a very decent comp. What's your take of their draft, guys? I think Zoe coming in really fast was very impressive. Even though we had a first pick Gnar coming out from DRX, still T1 prioritized the lead in the mid lane actually, so they locked in Zoe and Hecarim in the first pick for the red side. T1 today was focusing on their lane priority, and because of the power that their bottom duos had all throughout the 4 games, they kind of focused on the top side of the map. Today, Kana was able to flex on the opponents with his wide champion pool, so maybe Hecarim could have been a bit better pick for DRX in order to compensate and balance out the power on the top side. And Varus was really impressive as well, especially in the last game. Most of the hyper carry late game auto-based AD carry champions were banned out, so Varus was on the top of the tier list, in fact. I think T1 has went through this kind of a matchup during the scrims, and that's the reason why they had their tier list done. Now let's take a look at this first highlight. T1 was getting super ahead based on the lane priority that they had on the bottom lane, so DRX was forcing to open teamfight around the early objective. So let's take a look at this replay. Faker stepped down on the lane in order to pick up that exhaust on the ground, so they were able to chunk down Zoe. And also Gnar had lane priority as well, so Pyosik was thinking, we're winning mid, we're winning top, so let's just start this Herald. But this means that if you are starting this Herald, well, Kyria and Teddy can also make a rotation. The duos that have been dominating the lane. Orianna was able to show off her fancy feat for a moment, but still, T1 was able to easily outnumber DRX's players and easily pick up that Herald as well. I think DRX, their main issue throughout the split is about, missing out the tempo for that first Herald. They are always too caught up with that first Herald, and they always overcommit to take it away. Especially today, I think they were in a rush in order to lock down the first objective, which allowed T1 to take the agenda to punish their awkward positioning and bad team fight opening, T1, because they have enough experience to deal with this kind of situation, they actually played with DRX on their hands. I think in a short period of time, T1 was able to understand and analyze the characteristic that DRX had in their playstyle. Now let's take a look at the second highlight where T1 was able to dominate the game at 10-minute mark in the game. There were so many control wards on the side of the enemy blue camp for T1, which means Kyria had this clue that Pyosik will be around the bottom side of the map. So Kyria tries to go in order to spot that Pyosik looking for a setup play, and a fantastic skill combo actually comes in order to buy more time for Kyria, and then Teddy holds on onto the exhaust to fall off and then casts his empowered Q. Kyria was able to buy enough time for Faker to join this fight as well. It looked like a very easy kill secured by T1, even though they got outnumbered from the beginning of this skirmish. I think T1 was leveling up as the games went by. Compared to game number 1, at the end of game number 4, T1 looked super solid, and the POG will be going over to Cuz on Hecarim. That's less Hecarim in this game, and he was participating in most of the kills in the early game, and I think this early Smite fight was super critical because either Pyosik or Cuz could hit level 6, the one who took that Krug. And Cuz is so good at playing with consistency. He never throws, he's always in a very safe spot, but at the same time, he knows how to play the gameplay button. At the end of the game, he was able to play up against 4 players by himself, but still, he didn't die. Right here, he was diving onto the opponent's carries. Faker was able to chunk down that Ezreal, so Cuz was confident enough to zone that Ezreal away, and he predicted the QW combo coming out from Orianna, so he sidesteps and then runs away, even putting so much damage onto the opponents. And Cuz will be the POG winner for game number 4, and all the top side players will be winning today's POG on the side of T1, so let's invite the victorious players of the game. Already happy players for the interview joining the video call. Congratulations on your win, guys. Clap, clap. T1 is now heading to the second round of the spring playoffs, and we are slowly seeing the T1 of the spring split coming back. How are you feeling, Kana, picking up this victory today? We won 3-0. 3-1, so I'm so glad, and I'm glad that it's a quick day. We saw you guys smiling and laughing before the interview. What was that about? Cuz we just, we were just happy that we got the win. We also got the POG, so we were just happy about the victory. And Faker, we once again made it to the second round of the spring split playoffs. How are you feeling? Even though we were not performing at the best level during the regular split, but we were able to build up a momentum at the end of the split, and I'm happy that we were able to push this momentum forward. And Cuz, what about you? I'm glad that we won today. I'm pretty much satisfied, but still there were some moments where we played sloppy, so I want to work on those issues and come back stronger for the upcoming series. A very solid performance coming out from T1 brought you guys to a victory, and all the experts predicted that T1 will be winning today's series. Did you guys also expect it's gonna be your victorious night? I thought today's match is a must-win match for us, and recently we've been having a high momentum, so we thought we will be able to win. And I think we got the result as we all expected. It was 3-1 today. Did anyone predicted the exact same game score? Then who thought it's gonna be 3-0? Kana and Cuz maybe? What about you, Faker? What was your guess? I also raised my hand. I guess all three players were expecting a very one-sided performance coming out from T1. I think T1 kind of stepped up heading to the end of the series, you know, in terms of your draft and also performance. Kana, what's your thought about this? We certainly, we did lose a lot of games, but we also won a lot of games, so we were able to analyze and learn from our failure, and we are still in our process to find the best synergy. And cause we have top jungle mid laner for this interview, you know, the top side of the map. So, how would you like to rate the performance of your bottom duo today?
바텀 점수 10점 만점에
10
10점
out of 10, for sure.
네, 굉장히 기분 좋게 칭찬해 주셨는데 그러면 또 그러니까 정말 상체의 POG를 받으셨지만 바텀도
So yeah, it is true that top side of the T1 players got the POG, but T1 also have the MVP of the day and getting the champion belt. So who do you think will win the MVP of the day awarded by T1?
일단 저는 못 받을 것 같고
I don't think I'm gonna win it. I think Cuz will win it. Cuz, what about you? Who do you think will win the T1's MVP?
진성이 형
I think Teddy.
주는 게 어떨까?
I hope he wins because Kyria won too many of the champion belts. Kana, what about you? Who's your pick? Same. I hope Teddy gets it because Kyria has been winning all of the T1's MVP. I hope Teddy can get the MVP as well, but we also are very curious about the ㅅT1 event. Was that a misclick? Or was that something intended? Faker, could you tell us about it?
굉장히 전략적인
It was a strategic and tactical ban because we expected them to play ㅅ so we wanted to ban it away. So, Damwon Kia or Genji will be your next opponent. Who do you think, or who do you want Damwon Kia to pick for their opponent?
일단 저는 되도록이면 결승전에서
I hope to face Damwon Kia at the finals. I guess you guys, I guess Kana wants to play up against Genji in the next round. What about you, Faker? I don't really mind. Either team is fine.
별로 신경 안 쓰고 있습니다.
I'm not paying too much attention about it. The king of the best of 5 always is super confident regardless of the opponent. But what about you, Cuz?
저도 두 팀 다
Same.
상관없는데 이제
I don't really mind,
선수분들이
but
좀 원하는 거 같더라고요.
I think Hana Life wants a specific team, as I heard from the interview. Kana wants a specific team to face at the finals, and it's gonna be Damwon Kia, which means and he wants to face up against Genji in the next round. Kana, what's your mindset and your determination for the next round? We've been working really hard up until now, so we will keep this momentum and win the title in the end. And Faker, what about you?
네, 이제 시즌 막바지니까
We're heading to the end of the split, and we have been preparing really hard. I hope we can show the fans all about it and come back with stronger performance.
저희 팀
Our team
원들 다 같이
and
열심히
teammates
하고
has been
노력하고
working
있으니까
super hard. We are
네,
always
좋은 결과
working
보여줄 수
hard.
있도록
So I
하겠습니다.
hope we can pull off the best performance in the upcoming match. And Faker, T1's fans are super excited to see T1 getting stronger and taking another spring split trophy. Any message over to your fans?
응원해주시는 팬분들 감사드리고요.
I always appreciate your love and
이번
support.
시즌도 좋은 결과 만들어내도록
I
하겠습니다.
will
감사합니다.
work hard in order to repeat another successful result and split. So this will be the end of the interview from Kana, Faker, Cuz, the PUGs on the side of T1, and I'm gonna pass it back to our casters. Thank you.
감사합니다.
Thank you so much, Jisun, as per usual, for the interview and the analyst desk translation. And that will conclude round 1 of the playoffs. We still have round 2 to go. Gone are the days of the gauntlet. And we also have Damwon Kia to make their decision as to which team to face. I think we'd already had a conversation about this. I think now there's even more, up in the air as far as some other opinions on who Damwon Kia should choose. But let's have a look at the playoff bracket, just in case you guys forgot. Oh, sorry, it's the play of the day first. I apologize. As we're going to check this one out, this was, of course, yeah, that one spear. It's just
so good.
ridiculous.
It's like 60% health as well, and it's steady with the setup. Doesn't even change the game, by the way. This game is very lost. And I wonder if that comet hadn't hit, would that have been enough? But it does hit. And yeah, this kills the Baron push, right? As said, in the end, the play as a whole doesn't really have an impact on the game, but in that moment, it did keep T1 in the game for a little bit longer.
Yeah, it absolutely did. That being said, was a great game from DRX. Let's have a look at that playoff bracket now. I think I got a little bit ahead of myself because I'm actually really excited about who's going to be chosen, right? Out of Damwon Kia and their choices between Humble Life Esports and T1. Because you mentioned actually on the POG State, if you guys haven't seen it, we do go through sort of a lot of our opinions on who's going to be getting to where in these playoffs. I think a lot of people were assuming, even before the series started, that Damwon Kia would choose Humble Life Esports. But with T1 drafting like this and not necessarily getting punished, maybe it's time for Damwon Kia to say, I want to fight them early before they've learned from it. Is that a thing? I don't know.
That was my angle, right? That's what I believe they would go for T1. But on the other side, you want to get to the finals, you want to get those tasty points. And Hanwha Life, out of these two teams, clearly the one that was having a rougher go. Because while T1, there's valid criticism to be levied towards them, as a whole, did still look like a stronger, more cohesive team than Hanwha Life in the series against Nongshim.
No, that is exactly true. However, there's if you're planning on winning the tournament, you're going to have to face them at one stage, and that was definitely your point. It's a lot of food for thought, so maybe the decision is going to be a little bit more difficult. Damwon Kia will be making that choice in about 2 hours' time, and you can check out exactly what they say on the LCK Global Twitter as soon as that is available. So some very interesting stuff. It will set up exactly what Saturday and Sunday are going to be. However, for today, that is going to be it. IG are currently playing Draven in the bottom side of the map, so maybe it's time to go check out some LPL. We'll see you again on the weekend. Good night.